Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today is not the countermeasures ranking. I'm sorry, that's coming, but at 24 stories, it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would to put together. And at this point, I'm beginning to wonder if I should ditch just ranking all the stories and just do a top 10. Anyway, instead, today we will be looking at a new release from Big Finish, Doctor Who Unbound, Doctor of War, Volume 1, Genesis, released in April of 2016, directed by Barnaby K. Doctor of War stars. 1 minute, I have to pull this up because, my tradition with doing the Big Finish reviews is when I get to the cast, I just read the billing on the front cover. And the billing for this one is huge. So let me pull it up. And so Doctor of War stars Colin Baker as the Warrior. More on that in a second. Also featured in the cast are Tom Baker, Sadie Miller, Christopher Naylor, Jeffrey Beavers, Sasha Behar, Sanjeev Bhaskar, Sean Carlson, Nicola Bryant, Georgia McKenzie, Rebecca Knight, and Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks. The set consists of 3 stories: Dust Devil by John Dorney, Aftershocks by Lou Morgan, and The Difference Office by James Kettle. As always, I will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not listened to Doctor of War, in the description box below is the link to Big Finish's website, where you can purchase it. Let me start off by saying I really recommend this set. You should definitely listen to it. And as I said from my kind of introduction, Doctor of War is an Unbound release. If you are unfamiliar, I've talked about them a couple times on my channel here. Doctor Who Unbound was a set of 8 stories done for Big Finish's, Doctor Who's 40th anniversary. It's one of a few things Big Finish did to celebrate it, along with the Villains trilogy in their monthly range, as well as Zagreus. The name of the story is Zagreus. And after Doctor Who Unbound ran for 8 stories and then ended. And earlier this year, a couple months ago as a matter of fact, it was announced they were briefly going to be reviving Unbound, at least for these 2 volumes. So the premise, and I believe both volumes are linked. So the premise of this is, because, I totally missed that in my brief summary of the Unbound range. Wow, this review is already off to a bad start. So the premise of Doctor Who Unbound is, it's basically Doctor Who's take on what if. Because everything, I feel like every major sort of quote-unquote nerd franchise has a what if series of some sort. Marvel has What If. DC has Elseworlds. I'm pretty sure Elseworlds counts. Star Wars has one in their comics. I forget what it's called, but I know they have one. And so on and so forth. Like I said, Unbound is Doctor Who's version of What If. So we have, and in the past, we've had examples like, what if the Doctor never left Gallifrey? Or what if the Doctor had not been UNIT's scientific advisor? Or what if the Doctor had escaped the justice of the Time Lords at the end of the War Games? And things like this. So the premise of this ties into a specific episode. The 4th Doctor episode, Genesis of the Daleks. If you have not seen it, Genesis of the Daleks, as I just said, is a 4th Doctor story. And it has the Time Lords send the Doctor back in time to the planet Skaro to stop the Daleks at the point of their creation. This is a really famous story. It is the story that introduces Davros into the Dalek mythos. It's Davros' first story. And it features many great moments. And that's all I can really say on it, because honestly, I think Genesis of the Daleks is massively overrated. It drags. There are great moments, especially with Davros. He is the highlight of the story. But those moments are just stuck between these long, boring sequences. But enough about that. there is a famous scene towards the end of Genesis of the Daleks where the Doctor and his companions, in this case Harry Sullivan and Sarah Jane Smith, are setting up a bomb in the incubator room of the newly created, newly mutated Daleks. And the Doctor is holding two wires, and all he has to do is touch the wires to set off the bombs. And he famously asks, "Do I have the right? Do I have the right to commit genocide for the greater good of the galaxy?" And, before he can make that decision himself, the people of Skaro decide to basically hold Davros on trial. Spoiler, it doesn't end well. But ultimately the Doctor decides he doesn't need to make this decision. So the what if, after that extremely long-winded introduction, the what if of Doctor of War opens with the Doctor deciding to make that decision. What if the Doctor decided to destroy the Daleks, to cross the wires and destroy the Daleks at the point of their creation? And the opening scene, for the most part, is created fantastically. Tom Baker, along with Elizabeth Sladen's daughter, Sadie Miller, and Christopher Naylor, who's playing Harry Sullivan, recreate the scene wonderfully up to the point where the Doctor crosses the wires. And then, of course, from there, it spirals out of control. Now, I'm going to try and be as vague as possible about this set because I want you to listen to it, and I want you to go in blind. But there are some things I will spoil, like the Force, after successfully destroying the Daleks, the Doctor is pulled out of time and sent back to Gallifrey. And the force of the explosion causes the Fourth Doctor to regenerate. But instead of into the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, he regenerates into the War Doctor. That was something I forgot to mention. Genesis of the Daleks is important for another reason, because when the show was revived in 2005, showrunner at the time Russell T Davies said Genesis of the Daleks was the start of the Time War. So the Doctor has been pulled out of time, and the Time Lords are telling him that despite his efforts, the Daleks still got made and the Time War still happened. And the force of the explosion was fatal to the Doctor, so it causes him to regenerate, not into the Fifth Doctor, but into an alternate version of the War Doctor. This time played by Colin Baker, famous for playing the Sixth Doctor. And because it's my channel and I bring this up every time, I gotta mention it, my favorite Doctor. And right off the bat, before I even get into the specifics of the stories and stuff, Colin Baker is absolutely fantastic in this role. The Warrior is nothing like the Doctor. It's nothing like the Sixth Doctor. And Colin Baker, because Tom Baker is in this as well for a moment, and Colin Baker is just so fantastic at setting him apart from the Sixth Doctor. I have seen in the Doctor Who fandom, and even in my circle of friends in the Doctor Who fandom, people say that the best actor to ever play the role of the Doctor was Patrick Troughton, the Second Doctor. I am inclined to disagree. It's Colin Baker, and his performance in this set across all three stories is a testament to that. Again, it's just phenomenal. The different choices he makes from how he plays the Doctor. And yeah, also kind of a missed opportunity there. Across the original War Doctor series with John Hurt, because I haven't heard The War Doctor Begins yet, every time someone would call him Doctor, he would tell them, "I don't go by that name anymore. That's not who I am." And, things to that degree. Oh, that hurt my voice. And then instead, but yeah, every time he'd tell them he's not the Doctor, he'd never offer them an alternative name. But here, Colin Baker does. He is the Warrior. Now, before I get into the stories themselves, which are all fantastic, I have a word of advice. To truly enjoy Doctor of War, you need to abandon all sense of logic and reason, because these stories are absolutely insane. And that is another brilliant thing about this set and Barnaby K's direction. This is this set is the best, for an alternate universe take, is the best the Time War has been ever done. It was originally this Lovecraftian monstrosity, a war across all of time and space that you just couldn't comprehend. Like, Time War, you don't even know what that means. Like, the rules of reality and physics don't apply. And then Stephen Moffat did the Time War, and it was just Time Lords and Daleks shooting each other. And then in the past, Big Finish have tried Time War stuff to varying degrees of success. I haven't heard the Gallifrey stuff, but it still boils down to pretty basic warfare. In fact, before this point, the most creative the Time War ever got was the Neverwhen from the War Doctor Volume 2, Infernal Devices. But yeah, no, this set truly portrays the Time War the original way it was intended to be. It was originally proposed as. And it does a brilliant job at doing it. Now, the stories themselves, like I said, in order they are Dust Devil, Aftershocks, and The Difference Office. If I were to rank them, I would say Dust Devil is my least favorite. Still brilliant. John Dorney is always great. But for a set like this and what it's trying to do, it's the most normal. And then The Difference Office, which is really good. There's a classic Who story it ties very strongly into, or a couple of them, and I feel if I'd seen them, I might like it a little more. And then Aftershocks is my favorite. But and we're going to talk about that one. So first we have Dust Devil. We see... Okay, so even though I'm going to be vague about this set, or as vague as possible, I do have to spoil some things. Like, I spoiled what the what if is, who the warrior is, and I have to spoil the twist of Dust Devil, because otherwise there is just no way to talk about it. Because the Doctor is on this desert planet, and he talked about it before. But then we keep flashing back to travels with him and Perry, which and these flashbacks ultimately reveal why he's on this desert planet. Because after the opening with the Genesis of the Daleks scene and the Fourth Doctor's regeneration into the Warrior, Dust Devil follows the canon Sixth Doctor. Basically, this Unbound universe, this alternate universe's time stream is bleeding into the main universe the canon takes place in. And, as time starts to go haywire, of course, the Sixth Doctor is trying to figure out what's going on. And he gets separated from Perry. Nicola Bryant is also fantastic in this series. She's always good as Perry. I love her performances. But, Nicola Bryant does something in this story. And that's all I'm gonna say. Like, you want to know what she does? You need to listen to it, because right at the ending, she does a heel turn that is she is so bone-chillingly good. Wow, once I spoiled the twist, there's not a lot to say. But once again, Colin Baker is brilliant, because you realize once he's playing the canon Sixth Doctor, and we still do get glimpses of the Warrior in this story, the way he's able to play both characters at once really shows off how great he is, how brilliant of an actor he is. And then we get to Aftershocks, and there's something else that I kind of thought about just now. Because this is a Time War story, and the Time War in here is kind of portrayed as this Lovecraftian monstrosity that no one can really truly comprehend, there is even this sense across the three stories that the stories aren't even taking place in the same continuity. Like, almost nothing that happened in Dust Devil is brought up or referenced in Aftershocks. And barely anything from Dust Devil and Aftershocks is brought up in the Difference Office. There's like one thing. So it's like, there's even this idea that the timelines are so fractured that these stories aren't even happening in the same continuity or at the same time. Aftershocks is brilliant, though. Like, basically, after regenerating, Narvin, a character from Gallifrey, a member of the Time Lord Celestial Intervention Agency, the CIA, arrests the Doctor, and The Doctor spends most of the story in prison trying to figure out what he did, why he's being arrested, what the charges are. And then the Master shows up, played by, as I mentioned, played by Jeffrey Beavers. And because the last thing we saw him in was Masterful, and I'm trying to think of stuff he was in even before that. This is one of Jeffrey Beavers' best performances as the Master in a very long time. In fact, I'm even tempted to say, I'm not going to say definitively because he does some really good stuff, but I'm tempted to say this is my favorite Jeffrey Beavers performance. Possibly one of his best. And it's always interesting because I feel like Jeffrey Beavers only does one Master story every 1.5 to 2 years. And I just never realize how much I miss him in the role until I hear him again. And oh, he comes back on such a glorious note. His chemistry with Colin Baker is really what makes this story so amazing. For years, I have been asking for a proper Colin Baker Jeffrey Beavers story, because Jeffrey Beavers with of course he's had one story on TV with Tom Baker. He's had 2 with Tom on Big Finish. He had 1 story with Peter Davison. He's had 2 with Sylvester McCoy, and he's had 1 with Paul McGann. Jeffrey Beavers has had no stories with Colin Baker. Not counting Jago and Lightfoot, because they did show up in that spinoff, but I don't count it because they're not the focus of it. It's Jago and Lightfoot. And I have been asking for that. And we finally get it. And it's glorious. There are other things going on too. Like I said, despite the Doctor's efforts in Genesis of the Daleks and the opening of this story, the Daleks still happened. And things got even worse. Actually going back to Dust Devil, the Doctor and Narvin talk about it. Basically, the Time War still happened, but the outcome is even worse than it was supposed to be. Nicholas Briggs plays a new iteration of Dalek. And like I said, Nicholas Briggs is always good as the Daleks, but whenever he gets to do something new with them, I think that's when he really excels, because I feel like the Daleks can get kind of mundane from time to time. So when Nicholas Briggs does get to do new things with them, like a new variant of Dalek or the Daleks trying a new scheme, that's when I think his performance shines the best, just because it's something we haven't seen before, like the Dalek Time Controller or the Dalek Time Strategist, which is just a rehash of the Dalek Time Controller, but it's purple. Or the clone Daleks in Revolution of the Daleks. Or what's another good example? Shoot, there was one on the tip of my tongue and I forgot it. Here, Nicholas Briggs is playing a new one called the Twin Daleks, which are a pair of Dalek mutants sort of forced to share the same casing. And they are desperately hunting the warrior for what he did. In the past tense, I want to call him the Doctor, but in the present tense, I want to call him the warrior. And just, this story plays out like a political thriller, and it is exactly as tense as it needs to be. You are on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what is going on with Narvin. Why is the warrior in prison? What is the Master doing? And it all leads up to this horrific conclusion that just takes your breath away. Horrific in a good way, because horrific was the intention. And then we get the Difference Office, which, again, going back to what I said, feels like it doesn't take place in the same continuity as the previous 2 stories, because here, the warrior has become Lord High President of Gallifrey in his efforts to stop the Time War. He is throwing himself into the Matrix to try and, because he thinks knowledge will be the key to finally ending the Time War, which is, at this point, taken so many lives. This is also a story that features Barusa, who, I need to look up who in that cast played him. I'm sorry. If I was smart, I would edit all of this out when I go to render it, but I'm probably not going to. Sanjeev Bhaskar, who is brilliant. Everything about this story is brilliant. If I was going to rate it, I'd give it a perfect 10 out of 10. Also, I think this is the first um Big Finish story to feature Barusa in any capacity. I could be wrong about that. If Barusa was in other stuff, let me know in the comments. But yeah, Barusa is really good. And this is a very different take on Barusa from the previous ways we saw him in the show. Because Barusa at one point was the Doctor's teacher, and then after the events of the fourth Doctor story, the Deadly Assassin, he became the Lord High President, and then he turned into a villain for no good reason and died in the Five Doctors. And like I said, this is a very different take on Barusa, you know. He's still the Doctor's old friend and former mentor, but he's kind of timid, so to speak. Timid's probably not the right word, but he's shaken, let's say. Everyone on Gallifrey is shaken. Even the Warrior is shaken by the lengths they've had to go to win the Time War. It's even taken a drastic toll on the Time Lords in a really dark way that, you know, again, you need to experience. Also in this story is Rebecca Knight playing a new version of Romana Dvoratrelundar. At first, I thought she was only okay, but as the story went on, you know, you could definitely see the notes of Mary Tam and Lalla Ward in her performance, while still making it her own. I hope Rebecca Knight's in Doctor Who Doctor of War 2, and honestly, if they could do it, I hope she would play Romana 3, because Big Finish timey-wimey nonsense kind of undid Juliet Landau, or, you know, if necessary, Romana 4. I don't think that'll happen, because from what I've heard, Lalla Ward is kind of a diva, and she doesn't like the idea of the character of Romana continuing without her involvement, but I don't know. Like I said, I'd just like to see more of Rebecca Knight's Romana. And it's interesting, because in this story, her and the Doctor never interacted the way they did in the series, but Rebecca Knight and Colin Baker still have such a good chemistry that is very reminiscent of the Fourth Doctor and Romana. The Difference Office also does something interesting. Like, it also shows how the Time War is affecting other races outside of the Time Lords and the Daleks. Because, well, first there's a large chunk of this story dedicated to the Shibugans, or because the first time I saw them was in Series 12, I'm going to go by that pronunciation, the Shibagans, you know, the native Gallifreyans who do not become Time Lords, or the primitive Gallifreyans, so to speak. And, you know, just what the Time War is doing to them and what they're trying to do. And we also see races outside of that. Like, he's on the cover, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. The major antagonist of this story is Stigron. Stigron is an alien called a Krull, and, you know, they are known as masters of robotics, and they're great at building really lifelike robot duplicates. In fact, Stigron was, I think, the main antagonist of the Fourth Doctor story, The Android Invasion. And in the making of feature for The Difference Office, James Kettle said he drew heavy inspiration from the Fourth Doctor stories, The Android Invasion and The Invasion of Time. I think that's why I don't feel as fond for this story, even though I think it's the second best in the set, because I haven't seen The Android Invasion. I feel like if I did, and I knew who Stigron was, I might like this story more, but from this story alone, he is really effective. The actor did a really good job at showing how menacing he is. He's a very smart villain. Like, you see his plan play out, and it's like, oh, he's covered his bases, he knows what he's doing, and characters aren't, and he's succeeding because he is thinking through and being proactive. He's not succeeding because characters are being dumb. And that's all I think that's all I want to say. I've just been praising this set nonstop. Doctor of War Genesis, I've said it across this entire video, is brilliant. There are some amazing performances across this entire set. Again, with the standouts for me being Colin Baker as the Warrior, Jeffrey Beavers as the Master, and Rebecca Knight as Romana. I cannot recommend this enough. And it's getting a sequel in September. Doctor of War 2, Destiny. I don't know anything about it, but the bar is so high right now. I just hope the second volume can meet it. But those are just my thoughts on Doctor of War. Have you heard it? What are yours? Please start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.